What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video and happy Easter. We're going short track racing under the lights at Richmond Raceway for the Toyota Owners 400. And I know the short flat tracks have not been that great in the next gen era. Pretty boring races overall, but I do not mind boring when it comes to DFS or betting. But with Richmond being a high tire wear track, maybe that'll make it a little bit more interesting. But just not on the level of Bristol, because while that was very entertaining, that was impossible to project. Anyway, this happens to be your first time here. What's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. Videos on Saturdays, live streams on Sundays, usually playing for around 12 or 1 p.m. Eastern. But with this being a night race, we could probably push that to the evening. So just check around probably 5 p.m. and that's probably when I'm going to go live. Also, gotta give a shout out to my man Keister for nailing the YouTube comment contest last week at getting Byron exactly at 60 points and also being the highest fantasy score. And for this week, if you want to enter, all you gotta do is comment down below who you think is going to lead the most laps and how many, and the winner will get a cash prize. If you do enjoy today's video, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and let's dive right into it. All right, so let's talk some strategy here for Richmond. It's a short flat track with some high tire wear, gonna eat up those tires quite a bit. 3/4 of a mile in length, and we're gonna have 400 laps, which means 900 points are going to be very important this week. If you take 400 times 0.7, that means we have 280 diameter points up for grabs, which means, yeah, you gotta jam them in your lineups. You're gonna want at least 2 per build this week. And if you want to fit in 3, I am perfectly fine with that. I should mention that they're running the same tires that they did at Phoenix, so I'm not gonna guarantee that everybody that was fast at Phoenix is gonna be fast here at Richmond. But it should at least give somewhat of an indication early on in the week. I am recording this part before practice and qualifying. Obviously, that'll tell a pretty good story. Now, I think you're going to have to stagger the groups quite a bit when we look at practice numbers this week. But don't be surprised if we see some guys that are fast at Phoenix that'll be fast here again at Richmond. And if we're looking at similar tracks to Richmond, you can pretty much just throw all the short flat tracks in there. I would say Martinsville is probably the least comparable just because it's unique in its own way. But we could look at Phoenix, New Hampshire, Gateway as other comparable tracks. And finally, we made it to the driver by driver breakdown. We have to mention one thing first, and that is, of course, if you enjoy the community over on Patreon, I appreciate everyone that has signed up so far this year. It has been a blast. You can find that link down below in the description or the pinned comment. My projections for both sites, DraftKings and FanDuel, my optimal scores, my ownership projections, my own optimizer, cheat sheets, article going over cash games, tournaments, and then the whole betting dashboard, which shows the best values that I like get every single week. It's been a good year so far, up nearly 13 units with a 70% ROI. I'm not sure 70% ROI is going to continue throughout the rest of the year, but hopefully the good times keep on rolling. And also baseball just started on Thursday, so I've been doing baseball content each and every single day. So for those of you that might interest, well, it's on there if you want it. So if you want to check it all out, you know where to find it. Link can be found down below. And as you all know by now, I'm a partner with Stochastic, and they did launch their NASCAR Sims tool package to start this season. And you can upload my own projections to it, use their own, or use your own custom ones and simulate the entire slate before it happens. See which drivers are popping up with the most return on investment or which lineups look the best to stack up in tournaments. If you want to check it out, you can see the link down below in the description and make sure you tell them I sent you. All right, this is the next day and practicing qualifying just took place. So we're going to go my first thoughts on this entire slate. Then I'll have the more polished thoughts over on the Patreon and live stream tomorrow evening. Now, I did say in the strategy portion that we're going to probably have to stagger the groups this week because if you're just looking at the raw practice numbers, it's not going to give you the best indication on who had the best speed. And as you can see here, I did highlight the guys in bright yellow who were in Group 1, who had the faster track. Group B, obviously, slower conditions overall. Because as you can see, they are going to have pretty much the entire top spots. If we sort this by the 1 lap, it gets even worse right there. But the best thing you can do is try to see who is fastest in each group. Because I don't think Brad Keselowski is going to be a mid-pack car this week. I think he should be very strong. And he was a top 5 car in his group looking at the overall speed. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. Like, I don't think Christopher Bell is going to suck. I don't think Truex is going to be super slow. Chase Elliott's not going to be super slow. You saw him qualify on the front row. Hamlin's not going to be that bad either. So these are things that you have to keep in mind when you're looking at the practice numbers this week. Let's get into it here. We'll start with the 5-figure range. And we'll start at top with the man, Denny Hamlin. $11,200 on DK. $14K over on Vandal. He's starting at 11th. Opened up as the co-favorite with Christopher Bell to win this race, which I certainly understand. The Toyotas looked extremely strong at Phoenix, and you'd assume there'd be some correlation there, although there was certainly some surprises. But looking at practice, he was in that second group, so these numbers are going to look terrible. Same can be said for pretty much all the Toyotas. I believe only John Hunter Nemechek and Ty Gibbs were in that first group, and as you can see, Ty Gibbs, super strong numbers in Group 1, and then John Hunter Nemechek all the way down here also had fast numbers. So I would pretty much throw these away. I think they're going to be fine. But he does come at a pretty hefty price tag. So it's not like he's an easy lock and load by any means, especially when his teammate Christopher Bell, who I think has very similar upside, starts all the way back in 29th. Showed some pretty similar speed in practice. Both are really strong at Phoenix and both the great at short flat tracks in general. If you're looking at the numbers in the next gen era at Richmond, overall, very solid numbers for both, although Denny Hamlin, I guess, slightly better, does have a win under his belt as well. We know this is a great track for Hamlin. He's great at short flat tracks. Both these guys are. Christopher Bell does have more wins in the next gen era, but both should be very solid. But with Christopher Bell starting all the way back in 29th, I do think that puts him in cash game consideration. If you do happen to go the route of 2 drivers in the 10K and up range, I think probably just eyeballing it, Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell would be the ones you would get those early dominator points with Kyle Larson. Then you get Christopher Bell moving through the field, assuming he can do that, which I believe he will. Martin Truex Jr. will be a tournament option. He starts in 7th and very similar numbers to his teammates. I think the JGR cars should all be very strong. I would not be too concerned with these numbers. They're pretty much all good at short flat tracks, all pretty much good at Richmond. As you can see, Truex is right on par with his teammates here. Very strong numbers overall. Great history at short flat tracks. So you pretty much have to put them all in the same bucket. Denny Hamlin, Truex will be the tournament plays. Christopher Bell, more of a cash play. William Byron, $10,500. He's starting in 13th. Was one of the stronger cars in Group 2, which does give you some hope. But I think I'm just going to prefer the Toyotas here. They've just looked extremely strong this season. I know Byron's ran very well at short flat tracks. I know he's been good at Richmond in recent memory, but so have these other guys as well. So I'm just going to have to put him, I think, a little bit lower on the totem pole for me, because I do prefer his teammate starting in the pole. I think it's just an easier path to dominator points here for Kyle Larson starting in first, the best pit stall, which he said is going to be pretty important for Sunday night. So if you are just picking 2 main guys that you would prefer in this 10K and up range, I think Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson would be the ones you'd want to get to. And if you are playing cash games and you can afford 2 guys in the 5-figure range, which you probably can, I don't think that'll be an issue. Those are probably your starting points as of right now. I have not yet run projections or ownership, but I feel like that's where they're going to lead me. Then Ty Gibbs, we finally saw what the price bump is here. He's still the lowest JGR car, but I can't use the 8K or 7K range excuse anymore. They have priced him all the way up. His odds dropped at plus 850. So DraftKings FanDuel, if you haven't noticed, they pretty much just steal the odds and make it your DraftKings salary for the most part. So unfortunately, it's going to be kind of tough to get the Ty Gibbs. I don't think he's going to run poorly by any means, but he's going to have to be able to get up front, which I think is possible. But I would kind of put him right with William Byron, where I just think there's a little bit better plays in this price range, but you just can't rule them out because you need dominator points here at Richmond, and both of these guys do qualify as potential dominators, but and that price increase will probably scare some people away. He looked good in Group 1, obviously. These numbers are going to be a bit inflated, but he should be a top 10 contender quite easily. It's just a matter of being able to get up front and those dominator points, which might be a little bit tougher. A drop into the 9K range. We have Kyle Busch, $9,700, pretty cheap on FanDuel, over at $9,000, obviously in Group 2, as you can see, but RCR just tends to not be very good at these short flat tracks. If you look at what he's done in the next gen era so far, average finish of 8.8 here, running position of 10.1, and 3 top 10 finishes. So they haven't been too bad, or at least Kyle Busch hasn't been too bad at Richmond. But if we look at the 17 race sample size for him, these numbers just tend to be a bit off. I think Busch can hang around 8th to 15th, but at $9,700, I feel like he's a better FanDuel play if you wanted to get to him. So I can't imagine I'll get to too much Kyle Busch here. And Blaney probably in the same boat. Looks like a better FanDuel play. $9,500 for a guy that probably won't dominate. Doesn't seem super appealing. In the tournament pool, I think I like him more than Kyle Busch. Has excellent short flat tracks, although Richmond tends to be his worst one. Did lead a lot of laps here, I believe back in 2022, starting from the pole. And does have a fast car based off of practice, but wasn't Group 1, so these numbers, I'm sure, are a little bit inflated. Chris Buescher, I love the RFK cars this week at Richmond. Chris Buescher showed speed in his group, and Brad Keselowski looked strong in his group as well. They recently won here, so I think both these guys do look excellent. Keselowski, I'm sure, will be higher owned, starting in 23rd and about $1,000 cheaper, so Chris Buescher looks like a solid play in tournaments. Then we have Chase Elliott, $9,000, $8,500 on FanDuel. I think he's in play on both sides. Very cheap for a guy that has dominator upside. I know he's been a very tough man to trust over the past year now, and he wasn't that strong in practice, but he was in that second group, so kind of throw away those numbers for the most part. But he showed up in qualifying. He's got good track position, and track position is very important at these short flat tracks, so he is certainly a GPP dominator. Very cheap too, so it's not like he has to do the same thing as like a Denny Hamlin would have to do to pay off here. So I do like Chase Elliott quite a bit at that price. Because I believe it was Phoenix where he qualified in the top 5 and ran there for the majority of the race, but then the field got jumbled up a bit and really just couldn't get quite back up there. But if he can just kind of stick around, steal some fast laps, maybe get up front, that'd be a pretty solid day. Tyler Reddick, $8,700. He's starting in 19th. I don't usually love him at the short tracks too much. If you're looking at his numbers at Richmond, 4-race sample size here, nothing too impressive. Average finish in 19th, running position right around 15th. Only one top 15 finish to show for it. And if we look at the 17-race sample size, nothing too spectacular. Only 4 top 10s and 2 top 5s in 17 races. Like, he's cheap enough to where starting in 19th can work, and I'm sure the Toyotas will have some speed. I don't think Tyler Reddick's going to be a borderline top 20 car, but I'm not over the moon about Tyler Reddick. But with some PD, if you want to mix him in, like if you already have a few guys up front and you don't want to play Chase Elliott, I guess Tyler Reddick would make sense, especially if you're doing a Toyota stack. You think that speed shows up once again. Ross Chastain, $8,500. Pretty much the same play as Chase Elliott. So everything I said about Elliott can probably apply here to Ross Chastain. Also was not fast in practice at all. Like he was, I believe, one of the slowest cars in the entire field. 36. But showed up in qualifying, so his car is not going to be junk. And since he's starting up front, has that track position. But he's going to have to pretty much do what I said that Chase Elliott has to do. He's going to have to stay within the top 5, top 6, steal fast laps, potentially get up front, which I think is doable. But he's certainly a tournament play. I feel like Tyler Reddick will end up projecting better between these two. Then he's also in between Joey Logano, so I cannot imagine the ownership on Chastain will be high. And speaking of Joey, starting in 10th, amazing at Richmond, also looked pretty strong in practice. I don't want to keep sounding like a broken record, but he was in that first group, so maybe slightly inflated numbers, but still qualified inside the top 10. And he's just too good at Richmond, I think, to suck here. 3 top 10 finishes in 4 races in the next gen era, average running position around 9.2. And if you're looking at short flat tracks, like his team at Ryan Blaney tends to be very good at them. So at this price point, him and Brad Keselowski, I like them a ton. And I would say they're probably my favorite drivers in the 8K range. Just speaking of Brad, great at tire management. I think the RFK car should show up here at Richmond. I think he's just way too cheap. Again, a better play on DraftKings at that really low price point, $8,200. But I mean, you can play him on both sites quite easily, especially on FanDuel because 900 points aren't as important. And starting in 2030, he should be a top 10 contender. So loving BK, loving Joey. Give me the vets there. Alex Bowman, $8,000. Very cheap on both sides. Honestly, this 8K range does look pretty good. He is starting in 4th, and he tends to actually be pretty good at these tire wear tracks. And was in the first group, but was the best car in the 15, 20, 25, and not the 30 lap run, but was second in that one. Does have a win at Richmond back in the day. I believe he stole that one from Denny Hamlin. And while he's not the best short flat track racer in the world, track position, he's cheap for a Hendrick car. It looks like the Hendrick cars do have some speed this week, so I'd put him right in that same category as like a Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, but a little bit cheaper, so does not have to do as much. And then Bubba Wallace, pretty much the same exact play here. All these guys starting inside the top 5 that are not named Kyle Larson pretty much just have to kind of do the same thing to get there. But the cheaper you get, the more leniency, I guess, you have on these guys. And while it never feels that great playing Bubba Wallace at these short flat tracks, he was one of the best cars in Group 2. And we know Toyota should have some speed here. It's just really kind of tough to trust him at Richmond. Only 2 top 15s to show for it if we're looking at short flat tracks in general. Typically like a 15th-ish place car. So I feel like Bubba will move back. Sure, could he finish 8th, steal some fast laps, and that gets there? Sure, but you have some other guys in this price range that just makes them a bit tough to get to. You have Briscoe in 32nd, Josh Berry in 30th. I like both these guys as short tracks. And you have Bowman, Keselowski, Logano, so I just imagine that Bubba is not going to project as well, so probably can't get to him too much. Briscoe and Berry here, we just kind of touched up on them, but starting 32nd and 30th, both these guys tend to show up at these short flat tracks. Stewart-Haas Racing in general, if you're looking at Briscoe's numbers, he was in the first group, I believe, so those numbers don't make me feel that great. Yeah, he's yellow here, so I wish we saw a little bit more speed. Josh Berry was also in the first group, and while he wasn't super impressive, it wasn't like he was down in the Priest, Suarez, Hemrick, and Zane Smith range. So I would have liked to see a little bit more speed out of them, but I think over the course of the race, they should be able to move up. They're not like must plays by any means, but they'll project well. Daniel Suarez, really not too much interest there. Noah Gragson, I believe, had one of the better cars in Group 2. Yeah, he was in Group 2, so yeah, if he was in Group 1, I wouldn't be too impressed. But we know the 10 car knows its way around these short flat tracks. I think we can get with some Gragson here. I don't imagine the ownership will be very high at all. Starting in 17th, I think there's some sneaky upside there. Michael McDowell had one of the best cars in Group 2. He's starting back in 31st. Like, these numbers for being in Group 2 are honestly pretty good. I don't usually like McDowell at these short flat tracks, but starting all the way back in 31st, he'll have some PD upside, but he does feel a bit expensive. Like, I feel like if he's in the 6K range, this would feel better. I'm not sure I love paying $7,000 for McDowell at a non-road course. Austin Dillon, based off of track history, might not be the worst play. I know he practiced around 12th, but was in that first group, so keep saying it. But numbers are going to be a bit inflated. Does have 2 top 10 finishes in the next gen era here at Richmond. Tends to be all right at managing his tires. So I think Austin Dillon kind of in that tournament pool, similar to Noah Gragson, where I don't think the ownership's going to be too crazy, but could be sneaky, cheaper plays. Eric Jones, cheap Toyota, starting in 27th. These are Group 2 numbers, so I think he should be able to move up. Ryan Preece had a top 5 finish here last season, starting in 16th. Group 1 numbers, so not overly impressed about that, but anytime we're at a short flat track, SHR cars need to be in the pool. John Hunter Nemechek, $6,400, starting in 18th. Group 1 numbers, so inflated. I feel like 15th to 20th is probably a good day for John Hunter Nemechek. But after we look at all these other cheap plays, we'll see how that might stack up. Because honestly, it might not look too bad. We got to take another look at these cheaper plays down here. Cindric, I will pass on. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I can imagine they get the Ricky starting in 24th. Hocevar starting in 25th. Probably just going to ride around 25th to 30th majority of the day. The Joy's in the back as well. Very slow. Zane Smith, I believe he was in Group 1. These numbers don't even look that great either. Todd Gilliland, amazing qualifying. Starting in 6, I cannot imagine he holds up on this. So I'll have to pass. But if he finishes 12th and these other cheap plays suck. But we can get Justin Haley starting dead last year in 36. And I don't think he's going to be the worst car on the track. So I feel like that's probably the cheap way to go this week. Daniel Hemrick's only $5,000 as well. So, I mean, once we get after John Hunter Nemechek, all these guys just look terrible. Justin Haley will give a pass to starting in 36. I think that's fine. And maybe Harrison Burton just because it's a short flat track. But even then, outside of just kind of mixing and matching, Justin Haley would probably be the chalky option down here in 5K. Because honestly, I know it's a required car, but he has not been that bad this year. So once we circle back to John Hunter Nemechek here, maybe starting 18th isn't too bad for only $6,400 for a guy that I think has somewhat decent upside in Toyota. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. So I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'm more than happy to answer them. And don't forget to enter the comment contest. Just tell me who you think is going to lead the most laps and how many. And the winner will get a cash prize. If you want to check out the extra content over on Patreon, you know where to find it. Link can be found down below. I'll see y'all tomorrow on the live stream around 5 p.m. Eastern. I wish you all the best. I'll see you all next time.